While Marvel's Spider-Man 2 has us glued to our PS5s, I can't stop thinking about the other Spider-Man 2. The one that didn't only revolutionize Spider-Man games in its time, but the entire superhero genre. Seriously, even the Arkham series can trace some of its DNA back to this game. We're talking about 2004's Spider-Man 2 on PS2, the tie-in game to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man sequel. Let's discuss, but before we do, cue that intro. In the early 2000s, superheroes started to become big business, beginning with the release of X-Men in 2000. Superhero movies started to dominate the box office, and it seemed to always have some kind of a tie-in game to go along with the movie's release. One of the best examples of this phenomenon was Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, released in 2002. The Evil Dead director's take on the web-slinger was a smash hit, becoming the highest-grossing superhero movie at the time with a box office take of $825 million, bro. Listen. That's nuts. I could still remember the release of that movie and how crazy everyone went for Spider-Man at the time. I feel like everybody had a promotion at the time. Every restaurant, every store, it was Spider-Man fever, bro. Spider-Man has always been one of the most popular superheroes in the world, and people are starting to finally get what they wanted, so I understand. Now, the first Spider-Man video game tie-in was a pretty boilerplate action-adventure game. Its narrative loosely followed the events of the movie it was designed to accompany, while also including appearances by other Spider-Man villains aside from Green Goblin, including Shocker, Rhino, Vulture, and even Kraven. Spider-Man fans from back in the day could also remember that this was an improved version of the Neversoft Spider-Man game from 2000, just with better graphics. Since the game was also published by Activision, some of the mechanics and animations were essentially reused for that project, including some of the combo animations and web slinging systems, if y'all want to call it that. Now, in those games, Spider-Man webs must have been attached to clouds or something, because you could swing above buildings with no issues. There are also two different swing animations, one for normal swings, one for fast swings, and it was fine for those of us who played it when it came out, but that's because that's all we knew. It was our only option for playing a game featuring our favorite superhero. However, that system didn't sit well with everyone. Jamie Fristrom, the technical director of Treyarch, worked on Spider-Man the game for the entirety of its development. As a lifelong fan, he wasn't happy with the standard that was set with what was probably the character's defining ability, so he decided to do something about it. As development was nearing completion and the game was getting ready to ship, Jamie worked on a prototype for what would become the bedrock of the next greatest Spider-Man game ever made. You can quote me on that, because this set the new standards of what we enjoy from Insomniac's titles today, but more on that later. Now, unfortunately for the dev team working on Spider-Man the game, they didn't have much time to work with. They were tasked with creating the game as the movie was being filmed, so at best they had the character designs and concept art and the script to work with as they built the game. They did their best with what they had in only 8 months to crank out an entire game based on a character that is loved around the world. Their hands were tied in terms of ambition. That was not the case for the follow-up, at least at first. After the team saw the first Spider-Man movie on the big screen, they were filled with inspiration. Seeing the cinematic Spider-Man swing through the streets of New York, doing all the things a Spider can, really got them hyped. And once their first Spider-Man project hit the market and made a splash with 2.8 million units sold, it wasn't before long that they would get the green light to start working on the tie-in for the next movie, which was already entering development. But this time, they had more than 18 months to work with. Treyarch was given 2 years to make the next game. Yo, Treyarch was like, yo, hold my web shooters. Juiced up on hype with time on their side, the team at Treyarch got down to business and started working on Spider-Man 2. Two of the earliest pillars in Spider-Man 2's development were an overhaul web swinging system and an open world map with no load screens. Could you guys imagine a no loading screen in the PS2 era? Jesus. Now, while it wasn't necessarily a cakewalk, that first pillar was the easiest of the two to tackle. Jamie Fristrom had already begun working on it for the first game. It didn't take much for him to dig up his physics-based swinging system, where Spider-Man would shoot web lines at preset points on every building in their map, and then swing on that line like a pendulum until it was dropped and another line was fired. Early prototypes were difficult to implement due to the time that it would have gone into defining all the anchor points in a massive city city they were creating. So Fristrom and programmer Andrzej Prukowski implemented raycasting to allow for infinite anchor points on every building. After that, the game's AI would pick up the best anchor points in any given moment, smoothing over the process. After 2 months of tinkering and roughly 40 iterations, Fristrom and 5 designers took their work over to show the head honcho at Activision, including the COO at the time, Ron Dornick. What they made was obviously incredible, so the system was approved for the game. What they made was far more dynamic and exciting from the web swinging from the first game, and it actually achieved what players wanted from a Spider-Man game, to feel like the web slinger. Now, at the same time the web swinging system was being worked on, the 86-person development team had to put their heads together to figure out how they would achieve an open-world Spider-Man game. A 25.8 square kilometer map of Manhattan had been constructed, and while that's only half the size of the real Manhattan and completely dwarfed by more recent open-world games like Just Cause 4's 1024 square kilometer map, it's important to put things into perspective. At that time, the only example of open-world console games were 1999's Shenmue and 2001's GTA. That was it. Many developers were still trying to figure out how to make large open worlds work with ground-bound characters. So figuring out how to achieve that scale with a character that can run up the side of buildings, dive off, and then jump from roof to roof has its own challenges. To make things worse, the nature of the new web swinging system meant that the players could build up velocity until they were screaming through the air at almost 300 miles per hour, which meant that the data streaming of the open world would have to keep up with the insane speeds. The team ended up developing an advanced new streaming technology that would accompany the 86th district that would stream individually for players as they explore them across the map. All of that was on top of the extensive combo system developed for the game's combat system, as well as the Spidey Sense dodge mechanic, which if you look closely at it, it is eerily similar to the dodge indicator used in the Arkham series and the subsequent wave of games that use the same rhythmic combat, including, funny enough, Insomniac's Spider-Man game. Ladies and gents, I think we've gotten to what is called a full circle moment. However, all these ambition and scale came at a price. Spider-Man 2 is definitely not known for its looks, featuring worse graphics than many of the games that were released around the same time, including its predecessor. The new streaming tech was already pushing the 6th gen console to its limit, so the PS2 and the GameCube version of the game were pared back even further in order to run it at all. Now, despite the extra development time they were afforded, the Treyarch team still had to endure quite a bit of crunch. The last 9 months of the development were strained, and the creative director, Yoshitomi Murawaki, even said that the Spider-Man 2's development should go down in history as having famously bad crunch practices. Boss fights, sewers underneath the city, and a handful of other features and content had to be cut in order to ship the game on time. With its many issues, Spider-Man 2 served as the blueprint on how to make an awesome open-world superhero game. Without it, the Arkham games and the Insomniac Spider-Man series might not have been what they are today. So while you're switching between Peter and Miles, giving Kraven a beatdown, and facing down Venom, take some time to appreciate the original Spider-Man 2, the game that revolutionized the superhero genre. Do you agree with this retro glance? Comment below and let me know. Also, if you made it this far in the video, thank you. But also, consider subscribing. And if there are any other amazing games you'd like me to take a closer look at in future retro glance videos, drop me a message on Twitter or catch me on twitch.tv/Kashcroe. Also, if you're interested in becoming a producer for upcoming retro glance or how it ended videos, be sure to check out my Patreon. You'll find the links in the description below. Once again, thank you guys for watching. It's been your boy Cash, and like always, play on, player. Peace.